Hello, it's Joe Mullings with The Other Side. Today's guests on The Other Side are Brian Johnson, the president of MassMEDIC, and Matt Boyd, the president of Boyd Technologies. Gentlemen, thanks for joining.
My pleasure.
Thanks, Joe.
You bet. So, Brian, it's been a while. I think you were the first guest on The Other Side when this whole scenario started to unwind, appropriately so, heading up, if not the largest representation of medtech in the U.S. So thank you for coming back, and especially happy to feature you here today for the work you've done.
My pleasure, Joe. I feel like we've come a very long way in 4 months.
Yeah. And what? Gosh. What have we unraveled in 4 months? And we can go through the list of heroic initiatives that MassMEDIC and its members have done, and I do want to cover some of those. But what has it been like?
It's been a whirlwind. It's been humbling, terrifying, and ultimately life affirming in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Helps. I tend to think that moments like this are, they can either break you or they can make you. And I've just always tried to have my compass pointed towards, defining moment. Who you are now is who you are, and act accordingly. So,
yeah.
I mean, personally, that's how I felt, and that's kind of how I've tried to conduct myself during this whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah, you and your organization have pulled some amazing initiatives over the line, both for the community at large as well as certain organizations who could quickly come to the aid of the need of the community and the patients. And, that's an easy pivot for me to Matt and his organization, because Matt and you had been part of a major pivot for some PPE work. So Matt, first of all, thanks for joining us and appreciate your effort. And if I get this right, Boyd Technologies had seen an opportunity to help the cause and pivoted your amazing manufacturing facility to start fabricating a much needed piece of PPE equipment.
Yeah, that's right, Joe. Early March seems like a decade ago at this point, but, we reached out to Brian around that time and said, look, there's a lot of people calling us. We haven't really done anything yet. We can do some things, but we have a lot of commercial programs that are, operational right now. And we really need to consider the impact to the ongoing, supply that we provide. And so we started talking with Brian, and, one of the first things he said to me, which I remember really well, was he said, look, there's the here and now, and there's the long-term plan. And we said, look, we want to do everything we can to help in the here and now. And so we did a lot of work in the PPE space, also with diagnostics, swabs and other testing, and now we're kind of transitioned into the execution of the long-term plan, particularly for us as it relates to surgical face masks and N95 respirators. But we wouldn't be standing here now ready to have those installations for the long term, really, if it wasn't for Brian.
So as a business owner and a contract manufacturer who clearly has specialty capabilities within your firm, what is it like sitting over a dinner table and saying, wait a minute, we're going to pivot into something we've never done before. We're going to probably put some of our business at risk. However, we're making a decision, and our decision is to carry the ball for the patient and the community. What was that like? Take me back to that moment.
Joe, I joined our business in the very end of 2007, right before the financial collapse. And so I experienced that crisis. And I remember my father said to me, who founded our business, he said to me at that point in time, "You'll be better for this." And I asked myself for several years, really, as we went through that. But this time around, we were able to look at this crisis as and this evolved so quickly from late February to early March. But we were able to look at it and we said, how is this going to impact our business and our industry? What can we do to help? But the one thing that really was not a question for us was full steam ahead. Lean in, dive into this, and find areas where you can solve issues. And initially, it was in the immediate term. We were looking at distributed product from overseas. We did a lot of trial work on our existing equipment, but we did it all with the intent of long term, what's this going to look like? And long term, where will we be? And so, in that light, we started to make some decisions around capabilities in our facility, raw materials and the supply chain, that have put us in a position today where we feel really confident that we're still right in our lane in terms of being a service provider and a contract development and manufacturing firm. But we've been able to add value here, and we hope address some of these long-term supply chain issues for our industry.
Yeah. Brian, as president of MassMEDIC and such a thoughtful, powerful, selfless organization, because it's all volunteers, and we're not for profit, right?
Yeah.
What is it about Matt and Boyd Tech that is indicative of members of MassMEDIC and the community at large in the New England area?
Well, one of the reasons I said ultimately life affirming about COVID is because of the Boyd Technology story, because to me, it is probably one of the things that has made me most hopeful about what we've just experienced as a culture. On March 15th, I got a call from somebody very high up in the state government on a Sunday morning. And I can't tell you what it's like to hear fear in the voice of the powerful. And it was very clear to me that we were not prepared in the least. We did not have enough PPE to protect our frontline healthcare workers, that the magical supplies that we thought were there were not there. And we were in a whole heap load of trouble. The ship had a lot of holes in it. We didn't have enough fingers to plug up those holes, and the deluge was coming. From that moment on, for the next 21 to 28 days, was basically solid working straight, flat out on state response, nothing to do with what we do at MassMEDIC, which is really, we're a trade association. We're here to help medtech companies and foster an ecosystem of productivity. But what we did was we worked with our partners to try and figure out how the heck we were going to make sure that our hospital systems didn't crash, because they didn't have the masks, they didn't have the ventilators, they didn't have the face shields, they didn't have the gowns. I'm telling you, Joe, the cupboards were empty. And politicians and senators and congressmen and people very high up in Massachusetts' command center were calling me saying, where is this stuff and how do we get it? How do we make it? And, I put out sort of a call to arms, and Matt sent me a message that said, we can make these products. We think we might be able to make these products. So the most dangerous thing, maybe he might regret it a little bit, because for the next 10 straight days, Matt and I were basically the state's best hope to get N95 masks in, or any mask, anything they could put on their face. And so Matt was in Boyd Technologies, his brother, Steve, they were working tirelessly to figure out an alternative to to protective gear for our healthcare workers. And what we were doing was essentially coordinating with our partners in the Mass Hospital Association, Mass Bio, and the Center for Teaching Hospitals to basically do a swap drive to try and just get companies to donate whatever PPE they had in house. It was an incredible effort of everybody in the community, and never once among this circle did I ever hear what's in it for me. And that to me was the most exciting part about all of it. It was a community coming together to protect the greater good. And I can't say enough about what the folks at Boyd did. There were times on Saturdays, Sunday nights, 10, 11 o'clock at night, we're trying to get 3 million masks off of a boat, coming from China, and trying to get the state to make a decision on this stuff. If I told you all the stories, A, we wouldn't have enough time. B, I'm not sure everyone would believe it. But someday it'll make a hell of a mystery novel. But it was, I have to say, Steve Boyd, Matt Boyd, and their team, they are absolutely heroes in all this.
Love this. Brian and Matt, you and I, because I'm plugged into as a member of MassMEDIC and pretty much built my business 30 years ago in Massachusetts in the medtech ecosystem there. I'm watching the wrong focus on the media right now on what the PPP program did up there and what's wrong with the process over the last 90 to 120 days and the bad actors. And I'm seeing more of that in the media than the Boyd Technologies stories. What else are we missing? Why is that happening?
Well, you're missing a lot because Massachusetts, well, first of all, there's no doubt that there was what we should just call profiteering going on throughout with all the personal protective equipment. There was very shady actors happening, price gouging, you name it. No denying that occurred. But to focus on that misses I think the broader point, which was that there was a sense of collaboration in the Massachusetts business community, the Massachusetts science community, that we had been put here just for this type of occasion, that we were suddenly going to be we weren't just kind of commercializing technology. We were now fighting for our own hometowns. And both of us belonged to an organization called the Massachusetts Emergency Response Team, which was basically a group of MIT engineers and corporate folks and coming together to basically try and stand up manufacturing in the state to build this stuff here. And that was, I think we had 3 conference calls per week on that. They were not always fun. They're still going on. But I mean, that's just, one of the ways we were breaking down all silos. Everybody was working together to try and solve an issue. And, that doesn't even talk about the fact that, also in this town, they're working on the vaccine, and there's people all over our community that are just doing these quiet acts of heroism. And, I add that to the frontline healthcare workers, the postal workers, the delivery drivers, it was just, to me, it was so very inspiring just to see all of us fighting for our own hometowns. It is the only thing that has made me feel good inside, having watched this, because we've had a tremendous loss of life in Massachusetts. We've had 7,500 dead in 4 months. That's almost 3 9/11s. And it's, it has been dark and sad, but at the same time, what keeps me hopeful is what I've been witnessing from our innovator community. It's been incredible.
Yeah. Matt, as you look at the decision you made a few months ago and you've pivoted some of the capabilities of Boyd Technologies. What does this make your business look like moving forward? Does it change as a business owner and a leader your perspective on obviously serving the industry, but you made a decision as a businessman? You know, what are you going to be doing now that you were not going to be doing previously to first week of March?
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of a yes and no answer, because I think, you know, to your question that you just posed to Brian, sort of about some of the negative press and the that we're seeing right now, I think some of that is due to the fact that only the short-term successes have occurred so far. The long-term successes are in the works, and that's what we're going to start to see now. And anybody, I mean, I've heard you say 1,000 times, Joe, you know, success is about these incremental steps each and every day, consistency and commitment. And we never got into this with any context other than that. You know, we were going to pursue this with the long term in mind. It's not that you know, these PPE products can't be made in the United States domestically. It's not even that the distribution into the healthcare system is broken. It was really just, it was a little lopsided globally, and I think we're going to fix some of that. And I think that a lot of the partners we work with are going to look at their partnerships with folks like us a little bit differently, I hope, across their product portfolio. You know, just as an example, we talked about vaccines. You know, we have a number of component materials and products that are supporting vaccine development right now. We've pulled orders that were scheduled for Q4 this year into Q2. And we were able to do that because we're a strategic supplier in those supply chains. We've been operating those supply chains for 15 years. And I hope that that's one of the changes that we see here, is what I think has already been happening, but is this continued push towards strategic supplier relationships and you know, security of supply that is really meaningful. And that's one of the things that we've bet on here. You know, we're not launching a Boyd branded product in PPE. We're partnering with the same commercial partners we always have, and we're reconstituting the domestic production of some of those products and the raw material supply chain. And we're doing it with a long view that this is the way it's going to be, that this sort of nearshoring is going to be valued going forward.
Got it. Well, listen, gentlemen, I am proud to be on your team. I'm proud to be aligned with Boyd and MassMEDIC. What this industry does continues to bend my mind in a good way. And Brian, only because I consider you a great friend, I am so impressed. You're the only guy I know who can match his blazer with his lampshade. Dude, you rock.
Totally on purpose. Joe, I just want to say, I don't know if Matt said how many N95 and surgical masks they're going to be able to produce out of a little town in western Massachusetts. Yeah, an area, by the way, which is known for primarily for Norman Rockwell's paintings. But this is a true American. This is going to be one of the great American success stories, really, the fact that what has come out of this is that we're going to make these much needed equipment in Lee, Massachusetts. I'm so excited and so happy for that community.
Love it. Gentlemen, it's been my honor. I appreciate it. Continue rocking everything, and I'll see you all soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. This has been Joe Mullings with The Other Side.